You may have stumbled, you may have fallen so hard that you feel there's no way back. The weight of your mistakes, regrets, and past failures might be whispering that you're too far gone, that it's too late. But hear this truth today. God has not given up on you. He is calling you back. Not tomorrow, not next week, but right now. His love is not based on how perfect you've been, but on who He is. He is a God of redemption, and His arms are open, waiting for you to return. Maybe you feel unworthy, ashamed, or convinced that you've missed your chance. But that is a lie. God specializes in restoring the broken. He takes the shattered pieces of your life and forms something beautiful. Your mistakes do not define you. His grace does. The same God who called Peter after he denied Him, the same God who restored David after his failures, is the same God calling you back today. His mercy is new every morning, and His plans for you have not changed. You are not too broken to be used. You are not too lost to be found. You are not too damaged to be restored. Right now, in this very moment, God is reaching out to you, saying, "Rise. I still have a purpose for you." You don't have to be perfect to step into His calling. You just have to be willing. He doesn't expect you to have it all together. He just wants your heart surrendered to Him. The past is behind you, and your future is in His hands. So don't wait. Don't listen to the voices telling you that it's over. God is not done with you. You may have fallen, but this is your moment to rise. Let go of the shame, embrace His grace, and step forward in faith. Now is your time. He is calling you back, and He is ready to lead you into a new beginning. Failure is a part of life, but it is not the end of your story. Everyone, no matter how strong or successful, has faced moments of defeat, disappointment, and regret. You are not alone in your struggles, and you are not the only one who has fallen. What matters most is not that you have failed, but how you choose to rise again. The world may try to define you by your past mistakes, but that is not God's way. He does not see you through the lens of your failures. He sees you through the eyes of love, grace, and redemption. God's grace is greater than your mistakes, and He is calling you back. No matter how far you have fallen, His love remains constant. There is no mistake so big that His mercy cannot cover it. Sometimes we allow guilt and shame to convince us that we are beyond saving, but that is not the voice of God. He does not remind you of your failures to condemn you. He calls you back so that He can restore you. His arms are always open, waiting for you to return, and when you do, He welcomes you with love, not judgment. Now is the time to rise, not later. Your comeback starts today. Too often we delay our healing and restoration by saying, "I'll fix my life tomorrow," or "I'll come back to God when I'm better." But the truth is, you don't have to wait until you have everything figured out. God is calling you now in the middle of your brokenness. He is not waiting for you to be perfect. He wants you just as you are. There is no better time than this very moment to answer His call and step into the new beginning He has for you. Regret and shame have no power over a heart that chooses to answer God's call. The enemy wants to keep you trapped in your past, believing that you are unworthy of a fresh start. But when you choose to respond to God's invitation, you break free from the chains of shame and guilt. You are not defined by what you have done, but by what God is doing in you now. His grace washes away the past, and His love gives you a new identity, not as a failure, but as His beloved child. No matter how far you've fallen, His love remains constant and unwavering. Human love may fail, and people may turn away when you fall, but God never does. His love is not conditional. It is not based on your performance or your perfection. He loved you at your best, and He loves you just as much at your worst. He is the good shepherd who leaves the 99 to go after the one lost sheep. He will not stop calling your name until you find your way back into His arms. You have a purpose, and your story is not over yet. It doesn't matter how many times you have stumbled. God still has a plan for your life. The calling He placed on you has not been canceled just because you made mistakes. He is a God of second chances, and He can use even your failures for His glory. Your story is still being written, and the next chapter is in His hands. If you trust Him, He will take the broken pieces of your past and turn them into a testimony that will inspire and uplift others. God specializes in turning brokenness into beauty. Your past does not disqualify you. In fact, some of the greatest stories in the Bible are about people who fell but were restored by God. Peter denied Jesus 3 times, yet he became a leader of the early church. Paul persecuted Christians, yet God transformed him into one of the greatest apostles. David committed great sins, yet God called him a man after His own heart. If He could redeem them, He can redeem you. Your past is not a limitation. It is the very thing God will use to show His power in your life. Now is your time. God is calling you back, and He is ready to lead you into something greater. Don't let fear, shame, or doubt hold you back any longer. His grace is enough. His love is waiting. You may have fallen, but this is not your end. This is your moment to rise. God's grace is greater than your mistakes, no matter how big they may seem. Sometimes we look at our past and think we have gone too far, done too much wrong, or hurt too many people to ever be forgiven. We carry the weight of our failures like heavy chains, believing that they define us. But God's grace is bigger than every wrong decision, every sin, and every moment of weakness. His grace is not limited by human standards. It is boundless, overflowing, and powerful enough to redeem even the most broken life. Where sin increases, His grace increases even more. No mistake is beyond His ability to forgive, and no failure is too great for Him to restore. He is calling you back because He has not given up on you. Even when you feel unworthy, even when you feel like you don't deserve another chance, He is still pursuing you. His love is relentless. He does not turn His back on His children when they fail. He calls them by name and invites them back into His presence. He sees you not for where you have been, but for where He wants to take you. His plans for you have not been canceled because of your mistakes. He still has a purpose for you, and He is waiting with open arms, ready to restore what was lost. You don't have to earn His grace. It is a gift. Many times, we think we have to fix ourselves before we come back to God. We believe we need to clean up our mess, get our lives together, and somehow prove that we are worthy of His forgiveness. But that is not how grace works. Grace is unearned, undeserved, and freely given. You don't have to be perfect to come back to Him. You just have to be willing. He is not waiting for you to reach a certain level of righteousness. He simply wants you to come as you are. His grace will cover you, transform you, and lead you into a new beginning. The enemy wants you to believe that your mistakes define you, but God's grace rewrites your story. The world may label you by your past, calling you a failure, a disappointment, or unworthy, but God does not define you by your worst moments. He defines you by His love. He calls you redeemed, chosen, and restored. He does not see your past. He sees your potential. When you accept His grace, you step into a new identity, not as someone broken by mistakes, but as someone renewed by His mercy. His grace is not just about forgiveness. It is about transformation. He does not just erase your past. He uses it for His glory. The very areas where you have failed can become the places where He works the greatest miracles. He can take what was meant for harm and turn it into something beautiful. He can use your testimony to bring hope to others who are struggling. Your past does not disqualify you. It equips you to be a witness of His power. When you return to Him, He doesn't just forgive you. He restores you, strengthens you, and uses you in ways you never imagined. Now is the time to let go of the shame and accept His grace. You don't have to keep running. You don't have to keep punishing yourself for things that God has already forgiven. His grace is greater than your mistakes, and His love is calling you back. This is your moment to receive His mercy, embrace His love, and step into the new beginning He has prepared for you. Too often we convince ourselves that tomorrow will be a better time to start over. We think that when we feel stronger, when life is more stable, or when we have somehow fixed ourselves, then we will be ready to rise again. But that is a trap that keeps us stuck in the same place. The truth is, there will never be a perfect time to begin anew. Waiting for the right moment only delays the healing and restoration that God wants to bring into your life right now. He is not calling you later. He is calling you today. Your comeback starts the moment you choose to step forward. It does not require you to have everything figured out. It does not require you to have all the answers. All it takes is one decision. The decision to trust God and believe that He still has a purpose for you. You may feel weak, but His strength is made perfect in your weakness. You may feel unworthy, but He calls you His beloved. It is not about what you feel. It is about what He has promised. And He has promised that His plans for you are good, that He will never leave you, and that He will complete the work He started in you. The enemy will try to convince you to stay down, to believe that it is too late, that you are too broken. But that is a lie. You are not finished. Your story is not over. Every great comeback begins in a place of struggle, but it does not end there. The same God who brought Joseph from the pit to the palace, the same God who restored Job's fortunes, the same God who raised Jesus from the grave, that same God is working in your life right now. If He could turn their situations around, He can turn yours around too. Taking the first step may seem hard, but you are not walking alone. God is with you in every step, every moment, and every struggle. He is not watching from a distance, waiting for you to get up on your own. He is reaching out His hand, ready to pull you back up, ready to carry you if necessary. You do not have to do this by yourself. The moment you say yes to God, He gives you the strength, the courage, and the grace to move forward. Don't let fear keep you from stepping into the life that God has for you. Don't let doubt hold you back. The past cannot be changed, but the future is in your hands. What you do today determines what happens next. Choose to rise. Choose to believe. Choose to take the first step, no matter how small it may seem. Your comeback starts the moment you decide to move forward in faith. And that moment is now. Regret and shame can feel like chains that hold you back, whispering lies that you are unworthy, that your past defines you, and that there is no way forward. These feelings can become so overwhelming that they convince you to stay hidden, afraid to step into the light of God's grace. But regret and shame only have power over you if you allow them to. When you choose to answer God's call, you are choosing to let go of the weight of your past and embrace the new life He is offering. His love is far greater than your mistakes, and His mercy is stronger than any guilt you carry. God does not call the perfect, He calls the willing. He is not looking at your past failures and using them as reasons to disqualify you. Instead, He is calling you to rise above them. When you say yes to Him, regret and shame lose their grip because they cannot exist in the presence of His overwhelming grace. He does not remind you of your sins to condemn you. He reminds you of His love so that you can be set free. The moment you surrender to Him, you step into a new identity, one that is no longer tied to the mistakes of yesterday, but is anchored in the hope of today. The enemy wants nothing more than to keep you bound by shame, making you believe that you are beyond redemption. But the enemy is a liar. God's truth says that you are forgiven, redeemed, and made new. When you answer His call, you are walking in that truth. You are not who you used to be. Your past does not define you. His grace does. Regret has no hold over a heart that has been transformed by His love. Every time you take a step toward Him, you are breaking free from the lies that try to hold you back. Choosing to answer God's call is an act of faith, a declaration that you trust His plan more than your past mistakes. It is choosing to believe that His love is greater than your failures. It is choosing to walk in freedom rather than in shame. It is choosing to rise when everything in you says to stay down. The moment you say yes to God, you are saying no to regret and shame. They no longer have power over you because His grace has already covered you. You are not your mistakes. You are His masterpiece. And He is calling you forward into something greater. Your story is not over because God is still writing it. If you're still breathing, then He is still working in you. It may not always feel like it. You may be in a season where you see more struggles than victories, where you feel more lost than found. But don't mistake your current chapter for the final one. God sees beyond this moment. He sees the restoration, the redemption, and the future that is waiting for you. What feels like an ending to you is just the beginning of something new in His hands. The greatest thing you can do right now is trust that God's purpose for your life is still intact. Do not let the enemy convince you that you are finished. Do not let discouragement make you believe that your best days are behind you. God does not waste anything, not your pain, not your failures, not your struggles. He weaves them all into a story that will glorify Him and inspire others. You are not forgotten. You are not too broken. You are not beyond hope. Your story is still unfolding, and your purpose is still waiting. Choose to believe that, and watch what God will do in your life. God specializes in turning brokenness into beauty. Your past does not disqualify you. In fact, the very things you believe disqualify you are often the things He uses to shape your purpose. When you look at your life and see only mistakes, failures, and pain, God sees potential, redemption, and a powerful testimony in the making. He is not limited by your past. He is the one who transforms it. What you see as broken, He sees as something He can rebuild into something even greater than before. Your scars are not signs of defeat. They are proof that you have survived. And in His hands, they will become testimonies of His faithfulness. So many times, people allow their past to define them. They believe that because they have fallen, they can never rise again. They think that because they have made mistakes, they can never be used by God. But God has never worked through perfect people. He has always chosen the broken, the flawed, and the imperfect. He called Moses. He restored Peter, even after he denied Christ 3 times. If God could use them, why would He not use you? Your past is not a barrier to Him. It is the very thing He will use to show His power and grace in your life. God does not waste pain. He repurposes it. The things that once brought you shame will one day be the very things that inspire others. The battles you have fought, the wounds you have carried, and the lessons you have learned are not just for you. They are meant to be shared, meant to bring hope to someone else who is struggling. Every tear you have cried, every moment you have felt broken, God can use to encourage another soul who is walking through the same darkness. You may have once been in chains, but when God sets you free, He calls you to go and help others find freedom too. Your brokenness does not make you unusable, it makes you relatable. There are people who need to hear your story. There are people who need to see that God can heal, restore, and transform a life just like He has done for you. You are not meant to hide your past in shame. You are meant to testify about how God brought you through it. When you surrender your brokenness to Him, He takes the shattered pieces and crafts something more beautiful than you could have ever imagined. God does not see you as damaged. He sees you as His masterpiece, a work in progress that He is shaping into something extraordinary. You may have been broken, but in His hands you are being made new. You may have been lost, but now you are found. You may have thought your story was over, but with God, it is only just beginning. Do not allow your past to disqualify you when God is the one who qualifies the unqualified. Your brokenness is not the end of your story. It is the beginning of something beautiful.